After months of campaigning and debates, Iowa voters will finally get to have a say on which Republican candidate they would like to nominate as the presidential candidate.
Yeah, same. Now, every 4 years, this rural state in America's heartland comes under the spotlight for kicking off the race to the White House.
Now, even though the United States has its elections in the later half of the year, the election process will start today with the Iowa caucus.
But what is the Iowa caucus? Caucuses and primaries are the procedure through which Americans choose the nominees for president, both from Republican and Democrat parties. A caucus is organized by the political parties and not by the state officials. Each party organizes its own caucus. Voters registered with the party attend respective caucuses, which are held in hundreds of places in the state. Some states hold primaries, while some hold caucuses. Some states even hold a combination of both the systems.
Even though Iowa is a small state with not much political might to swing the election result, the caucus is still very crucial in the race to the White House. It is the very first round of an actual intra-party fight between the presidential hopefuls and kickstarts the election season. Any candidate who wins Iowa caucus gets a boost to their profile.
This year, since Joe Biden has already been chosen as the nominee from the Democrat Party, the 2024 primary race only holds significance for the Republican Party.
US-based political website 538, which compiles average of public opinion polls, has pinned support for Donald Trump at 52% in Iowa. That's more than 30 points above other Republican contenders. That's Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis.
The Iowa caucus on Monday will also likely decide who is in the running with Trump and who falls by the wayside. Nikki Haley said on Sunday that the Republicans' contest to choose the presidential nominee is going to be a two-person race between her and former U.S. President Donald Trump. And Iowa will decide on Monday.
Chaos follows it.
Now, to discuss this further, we're being joined by Stephen Golub, live from California, international affairs expert and a political analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA. Always a pleasure to have you.
A pleasure to be here, and thanks for that great introduction to the caucuses.
Sir, I want to begin by asking you, in fact, just to understand this better, how important is the Iowa caucus, considering it's the nation's first primary test for Republicans, as we mentioned, since it's known as the place where underdogs can become serious contenders?
It's far more important than it should be by virtue of going first. The media just focuses all sorts of attention on Iowa because it's the first time people actually show up and indicate their preferences in ways above and beyond just public opinion surveys. Since it goes first, if someone outperforms expectations, then they get a lot of momentum going into the next big vote, which is the primary in New Hampshire 8 days later. If they underperform, then they may lose momentum and it could hurt their candidacy.
Right. Mr. Golub, you speak of how people show up in the Iowa caucuses. Now, Iowa is expected to be brutally cold today. And should the Trump campaign be worried at all, concerned with how the Trump campaign is leading? Trump voters may not feel that it is required or necessary to brave the cold and go out.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think the Trump campaign should be worried because a lot of Trump supporters are really passionate about him. Some of them in an almost cultish way. So even though the overall turnout will diminish, he should still easily finish first. The real question is whether Nikki Haley will beat Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, for second place. And if she does, then that will give her a lot of momentum going into New Hampshire, which is a state where she's polling relatively well and even has a chance of beating Trump there. That is in New Hampshire.
Right, sir. In fact, and of course, we're going to be tracking this very closely through the course of the day. But I believe what everyone wants to understand is that Trump is, of course, leading by 30 points above Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. Now, I just want to understand, what are your predictions as to how things may unfold?
Oh, Trump will win easily. He'll get this is just a rough guess, but maybe 50% of the vote or more. And then the other candidates will divide the remainder of the vote. There is a bit of a wild card here that you already pointed out. It's going to be bitterly cold there. It's going to be minus 25 degrees Celsius tomorrow night in Iowa. And even though Iowans are somewhat accustomed to these very cold winters, that's unusually cold, even though they bundle up very warmly, their heating systems adapt. They're much better adapted than I am here in sunny California, to be honest. There is a bit of a wild card there in terms of how that might affect turnout. Having said all that, I think Trump will still win comfortably. And Haley, if she comes out and beats DeSantis, we'll have for second place, we'll have some significant momentum going into New Hampshire. And that could be a very, very interesting contest 8 days later, as I said.
Right, Mr. Gawley, we'll of course be tracking the Iowa caucus very closely here on WION, but thanks very much for taking our time and joining us here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.